On First at 9 this Tuesday, the 22nd of July 2025. Guilty as charged. Suspended IGP Deshbandhu Thennakoon found guilty of all allegations. Committee of Inquiry recommends Thennakoon's removal from IGP post. Abolishing privileges. The Attorney General has granted clearance for the bill aimed at abolishing the special privileges granted to former presidents and their families, Cabinet spokesman reveals. Max to the minimum. Parliament passes amendments to the National Minimum Wage of Workers Act, increasing the minimum wage to 30,000 rupees from January 2026. Deflation. Sri Lanka's NCPI-based inflation eases further in June.
Men, Sopyana.
From Derana, this is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9, Sri Lanka's most trusted news source. I'm Tatya Aronayaka, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. We begin with your top story. The Committee of Inquiry tasked with probing the allegations of misconduct against suspended IGP Deshbandhu Thennakoon has found him guilty of all allegations. Announcing this development in Parliament today, Speaker of the House Dr. Jagat Wickramaratne confirmed that he has received the full report of the committee, which has recommended Thennakoon's removal from the post of IGP.
On the 27th of February this year, the Matara Magistrates Court ordered the arrest of 8 police officers, including the then Acting Inspector General of Police, Deshbandhu Thennakoon, over the 2023 Waligama shooting incident which claimed the life of a police sergeant attached to the Colombo Crimes Division. The charges against Thennakoon encompassed multiple allegations, including misusing his authority as head of the police department by deploying 8 officers to participate in an unlawful assembly, conspiring with subordinates to engage in criminal intimidation for personal gain, among other serious accusations. Against this backdrop, Thennakoon surrendered to the Matara Magistrates Court on March 19th, after which the court ordered that he be remanded, and after 22 days in custody, he was granted bail on April 10th. Meanwhile, a motion seeking Thennakoon's removal from office was submitted to the Speaker of Parliament on March 25th, endorsed by 115 ruling party MPs. Consequently, the Speaker appointed a 3-member investigative committee to examine the misconduct allegations against the suspended IGP, chaired by Supreme Court Justice Preeti Padman Surasena. Upon concluding its investigation, the committee submitted its final report to the Speaker, who informed Parliament today that the suspended IGP Deshbandhu Thennakoon was found guilty of all charges.
I have now received formal findings of the committee. This committee, having conducted its inquiries, has unanimously found the officer in question guilty of the allegations brought against him. This marks a historic moment in our constitutional journey, the first time in the history of the Republic of Sri Lanka that such a committee has submitted its findings recommending the removal of an Inspector General of Police under the provision of the law enacted by the Parliament. As mandated under Section 17 of the Removal of Officers Procedure Act, I am obliged and hereby undertake to place the finding of guilt in the form of resolution in the order paper of Parliament for the consideration and vote of this House. For the information of the honourable members and the interest of transparency and public accountability, I have directed the Secretary General of Parliament to table the committee's report as a parliamentary paper, and arrangements will be made for the members to receive copies in all 3 official languages in due course. I also intend to authorize its release to the general public, mindful of public interest and fundamental importance of upholding the trust reposed in institutions. The House shall be notified in due course of the scheduled date for the debate and vote.
With the committee's findings established, the next step requires the Speaker to table a resolution in the Parliament's order book to formally remove Thennakoon from his position as stipulated under Section 17 of the Removal of Officers Act No. 5 of 2002. Following this, under Section 18 of the same Act, if the resolution is passed by a majority of members of Parliament, including those absent, the President holds the authority to dismiss suspended IGP Deshbandhu Thennakoon from office.
Crunchy goodness for hunger on the go.
යාඩියා ලොව වැඩියෙන්ම අලෙවි වන ඉලෙක්ට්‍රික් ස්කූටරය අවාන්ස් ඔටෝ වෙතින්.
Cabinet spokesperson Minister Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa revealed that the Attorney General has granted clearance for the bill aimed at abolishing special privileges granted to former presidents and their families. Speaking at the weekly cabinet briefing, the minister said the bill will be gazetted and subsequently presented to Parliament for approval.
හිටපු ජනාධිපතිවරුන්ගේ සහ
The draft bill of the President's Entitlement Repeal Act has been prepared to remove the special entitlements provided to former presidents and their families, excluding the pension. It is ready to be published in the Government Gazette and submitted to Parliament.
මේ අවුරුද්ද ඇතුළත ඔබට විශ්වාසය පළ කරන්න පුළුවන්ද මේ ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙයි කියලා?
An entire year will definitely not be necessary. These measures will be taken shortly. The bill will be presented to Parliament for approval, after which it will be implemented.
බොහෝ දෙනා කතා බහට ලක් කරේ හිටපු ජනාධිපති මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ මහත්මයා පිළිබඳවයි. විශේෂයෙන්ම ඔහු යුද්ධයට ලබා දුණු නායකත්වය නිසා ඔහුගේ ආරක්ෂාව විශේෂයෙන්ම ලබා දිය යුතු කියලා. එතකොට යම් කිසි විදිහකින් මේ හිමිකම් පනත සංශෝධනය කරලා ඔහුගේ ආරක්ෂාව පිළිබඳව හරි ගැටලු සහගත තත්ත්වයක් නැති වුණොත් ආණ්ඩුව හැටියට කොහොමද මේ වගකීම ගන්නෙ?
දැනට ජීවත් වන ජනාධිපතිවරු සහ ඔවුන්ගේ කලත්
This decision was made generally, applying equally to all living former presidents and their families. In addition, there is an existing court order regarding the security of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa. Also, you didn't ask about former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, who was the Defence Secretary at the time. All these facts will be taken into account in deciding the necessary security measures.
ඒ දවස්වල ඔබතුමා සහ දැන් ආණ්ඩුව සහ ඔය කියන පාර්ශවයන් අතර මහින්ද රාජපක්ෂ ඒ කණ්ඩායම අතර ඇති වුණු සංවාදයේ දිහා බලන් ඉන්නකොට ඔවුන් ඔබතුමාලගේ ආණ්ඩුවෙන් ඉල්ලුවා මේ ලියුමක් අපිට ලියුමක් එවන්න අපි යන්නම් කියලා. එතකොට ඔබතුමාලා කිව්වා අපි ලියුම එවන්නම් වෙලාවට එවන්නම් එතකොට යන්න කියලා. නමුත් ඒ වෙන්නේ ලියුමක් වමාරුනේ නැහැ. දැන් මේ පනත සංශෝධනය වුණාට පස්සෙත් එම ලියුමක් එවන්න අවශ්‍ය වෙනවද? ඔවුන් ගෙදරින් ගියේ නැත්නම් මොකද ඒ විපක්ෂ කණ්ඩායම ඔහුවට රැක්වෙමින් ඔහුගේ ආරක්ෂාව තහවුරු කරනවා ඒ වගේ ලොකු කාරණා කිව්වා. එහෙම දෙයක් වුණොත් මොකද කරන්නේ?
Let us first complete the legal process. Once the amendments to the Act are passed, we will assess whether a formal letter is necessary or if the legal changes are sufficient.
පිළිසුරු ධූරය සඳහා ප්‍රීතිපත්මන් සූරසේන මහත්මයාගේ නම ජනාධිපතිතුමා නම් කරලා යවලද තියෙන්නේ? ඒක හරිද?
ඔව්
Yes, the President has nominated Justice Preeti Padman Surasena to the Constitutional Council for appointment as the next Chief Justice.
The Cabinet of Ministers approved the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding with the Bosang local government in South Korea for the recruitment of Sri Lankan workers under the E8 Visa Periodical Employment Program for agricultural activities in Bosang province. Meanwhile, Cabinet approval was also given to establish a threat hunting and malware analysis lab within the Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team to better identify and combat threats in the cyberspace. With that, here's a look at more key decisions taken during this week's Cabinet meeting.
The Cabinet approved the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding with the Bosong Provincial Government of the Republic of Korea for the recruitment of Sri Lankan workers under the E8 Visa Periodical Employment Program for agricultural activities in the province. This will allow Sri Lankans to work up to 8 months in agricultural villages, providing opportunities to earn income abroad and contribute to the country's foreign exchange earnings. Cabinet approval was granted to establish a threat hunting and malware analysis lab within the Sri Lanka Computer Emergency Readiness Team to identify cyber threats and enhance the capability to combat such threats. The lab will support the secure implementation of key digital transformation projects, including the Digital Identity Card Project, the National Data Sharing Platform and the Government Cloud. The Cabinet approved the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding between Sri Lanka's Ministry of Digital Economy and the National University of Singapore to advance collaboration on artificial intelligence. This partnership, following discussions with AI Singapore, will promote joint research, capacity building and cooperative efforts to address emerging local and global AI challenges. Meanwhile, the proposal to transfer 2 plots of land in Mahenawatha, Pitipana Homagama for science and technological development was also greenlit by the Cabinet. Accordingly, 19.25 hectares will be allocated to the Ministry of Science and Technology for the establishment of Nano Science Park and 7.1 hectares will be transferred to the University Grants Commission to establish the Faculty of Technology of the University of Colombo, both subject to the assessed land value. The Cabinet approved the awarding of the contract for aviation insurance policies and services for Sri Lankan Airlines to Sri Lanka Insurance Corporation General Limited. This decision follows a competitive national procurement process during which 3 bids were received. The contract covers 4 aviation insurance policies for 2025 to 2026 and aviation insurance services for 2025 to 2028. Similarly, the Cabinet approved the extension of the contract with Biman Bangladesh Airlines Limited for providing ground handling services to Sri Lankan Airlines at Dhaka Airport. The extension covers a period of 3 years from October 1st, 2025 to September 30th, 2028. The Cabinet approved the issuance of a call for expressions of interest and technical proposals from local manufacturers for the procurement of medicines and medical supplies for the year 2026. This follows the selection of 24 manufacturers in 2025 to supply 130 medicines and related medical products, with current agreements set to expire by the end of this year.
Apico Next Gen. Make the leap to faster sleep.
හොඳම ෆෝන් එකක් ගන්න. ළඟම අපාන්ස් එකට යන්න.
The National Minimum Wage Amendment Bill for Employees was passed in Parliament today with amendments. Accordingly, the minimum monthly wage will be increased to 27,000 rupees with effect from the 1st of April 2025 and further raised 30,000 rupees starting January 1st, 2026.
The National Minimum Wage of Workers Act number 3 of 2016 mandates the minimum wage for all workers in Sri Lanka. According to this act, the current monthly minimum wage is 17,500 rupees. We discussed increasing it to 30,000 rupees. However, from the employer's side, it was agreed that the increase would take place under 2 phases. Accordingly, from April 1st, the minimum wage will increase to 27,000 rupees and the remaining 3,000 will be added from January 2026. The Act will be amended accordingly to reflect these changes. That is a commendable step. However, in doing so, you seem to have forgotten the 41st promise in your election manifesto, a thriving nation, a beautiful life. You pledged to ensure a daily wage of 1,700 rupees for plantation workers. I would like to know from when do you plan to implement that wage increase? Wages for several industries, including the plantation sector, are determined by their respective wages boards. Discussions are currently underway to increase the daily wage to 1,700 rupees in consultation with these boards. At present, the proposed 1,700 rupees comprise 1,350 rupee basic wage and a 350 rupee allowance. This government promised to increase the wages of the plantation sector by 2,000 rupees immediately upon assuming power. At the very least, you should apologize and admit that you cannot fulfill those promises and are doing what is feasible under the current circumstances. Starting from April 1st, all private sector employees must receive this new minimum wage. Many companies have already provided the wage increment from April 1st, but some have not. Those firms will be required to increase their workers' salaries once the Amendment Act is passed today, and they must also pay arrears for the months since April. Now the government claims we are holding them back when they are trying to take action. However, it's Donald Trump who is causing the real trouble, not us. Today you are discussing a minimum wage increase. But if the US tariff imposed on us take effect, thousands of workers in garment factories will lose their jobs. Some government ministers seem to be at odds with their own administration. Just yesterday, the Minister of Agriculture in Anuradhapura said there is no such thing as self-sufficiency and that if needed, they would import rice. Regardless of the challenges, such a statement is highly inappropriate coming from the Minister of Agriculture.
Members of several trade unions of the Sinol Electricity Board reported sick leave today in protest of the proposed Sri Lanka Electricity Amendment Bill. Meanwhile, employees who reported to work staged a demonstration in front of the CEB headquarters.
Ceylon Electricity Board trade unions raised strong objections to the proposed electricity amendment bill, claiming it threatens to undermine the rights and privileges of the board's 22,000 employees as well as negatively impact the interests of 7.2 million electricity consumers. They further claimed that the proposed electricity amendment bill seeks to divide the Ceylon Electricity Board into 5 separate entities with the intention of selling them off, and that the regulatory authority of the Public Utilities Commission will be transferred to the subject minister in charge. Accordingly, in protest of the proposed Electricity Act, members of several CEB trade unions reported sick leave today. However, some employees still reported to their duties as usual.
This is the first warning to the government. If the government does not respond, we are ready to implement further trade union action within 2 days. We are not asking for much. According to the Shop and Office Employees Act, our privileges will be discontinued if the CEB is handed over to a private company. We lose our rights as government employees if the CEB becomes privatized. Then our rights will be regulated by the Shop and Office Employees Act. If that happens, we cannot fight against it.
Concurrently, several engineers and other employees of hydropower stations also reported sick leave today. However, according to a senior official of the Lakshapana complex, operations at Lakshapana, New Lakshapana, Pulpitiya, Canyon, Vimala Surendra and Upper Kotmale power stations were uninterrupted. Meanwhile, members of trade unions that reported to work today launched a demonstration in front of the CEB head office in Colombo this afternoon.
We are not requesting salary increments or allowances. We are asking the government to reach an agreement with us to protect workers' rights.
Meanwhile, the Committee on Parliamentary Business decided not to proceed with the second reading of the Sri Lanka Electricity Amendment Bill, originally scheduled for debate on July 24th, due to a technical matter. The bill is scheduled to be debated on a further parliamentary date after the relevant issues are resolved.
The recent dismissal from service of former State Intelligence Service Director SDIG Nilantha Jayawardena was criticised in the political arena today.
We are aware of how the President spoke about the National Police Commission in recent times. The Commission was threatened and accused of not working in accordance with the government's wishes. The President and the government, who accused and threatened the National Police Commission, is trying to take credit for the decision taken by the Commission to dismiss SDIG Nilantha Jayawardena from the service. The Army Commanding Officer who was in charge of the Eastern Province when the Easter Sunday attack took place is the current Deputy Minister of Defence. This is when Sarah escaped. Who helped her escape? That is a fact that must be investigated. The Easter Sunday attack took place because the police was evading duty. However, Nilantha Jayawardena, the intelligence head who provided this information, was dismissed from service. Former CID Chief SDIG Ravi Senratna, who failed to take action to prevent the Easter Sunday attack even after a lot of information was provided, was appointed Secretary to the Ministry of Public Security. The report of the disciplinary committee, which was appointed to probe Nilantha Jayawardena, says he fulfilled his duties accordingly and that there is no reason for any punishment. What happened? They disregarded the committee report and appointed another committee to conduct a disciplinary inquiry. Instead of handing over a trophy to Nilantha Jayawardena, who performed an unprecedented feat in history, the communication director of the Catholic Church, Reverend Father Jude Krishantha, commended the President over Jayawardena's unjust dismissal from service. If the National Police Commission, which is supposed to be independent, ordered the relevant dismissal, why is he thanking the President? His gratitude implies two things. Either this dismissal was initiated based on a request from the Cardinal, or else the dismissal of the first committee's report as well as the appointment of a new committee was influenced by the President. We heard Shani speaking to the media claiming that all suspects linked to the Easter Sunday attack have been arrested and that all investigations have concluded. However, when this government was being formed, they kept saying the mastermind behind the attack was not identified. The whole country is aware that Mohammed Ibrahim's two sons were involved in the suicide bombings. The people are also aware of him being a JVP nationalist candidate. However, the people are unaware of any legal action initiated against him. I can say this, Ravi Senratna is not suited to hold that portfolio. He who misled the public, including myself, with regard to Easter Sunday attack, was the one who claimed that the ISIS was not responsible for the attacks. We believed him. This is what led to our belief that there was an external mastermind behind the attacks. However, the United States report clarifies that the attack was in fact backed by ISIS. Accordingly, he is not suited to hold this position. There are numerous complaints against him. Even the Attorney General's department is working to protect him from any legal consequences. This is setting a very bad precedent.
With that, here's a look at more news across the island in brief.
Colombo Additional Magistrate Harshana Kekunavala granted bail to Sean Yahampat Gunaratna, former Personal Secretary to ex-Minister Manu Shananayakara, who was arrested by the Bribery Commission. Bail was set to two sureties of 2.5 million rupees each, along with an overseas travel ban. The order followed submissions from both the Bribery Commission and the defence. Meanwhile, an accident occurred this afternoon near CP Pura Primary School, Min area on the Polonnaruwa Colombo Main Road, when a tripper truck overtaking another vehicle crashed into a cab heading in the opposite direction. The incident resulted in a head-on collision between a private bus carrying school children, a small lorry and a safari jeep. The injured cab driver was admitted to the Polonnaruwa General Hospital. In other local news, 3 elephant carcasses, including a tusker with its tusks removed, were found in the Inamalua Forest Reserve, raising suspicions of poaching. Locals claim a total of 6 elephants have died, but only 3 have been confirmed by authorities. No investigations or post-mortems have been conducted as yet.
Welcome back. Taking you to business news, Sri Lanka's overall rate of inflation as measured by the National Consumer Price Index decreased to 0.3% in June 2025 compared to 0.6% recorded in May of this year. According to data from the Statistics Office, food inflation decreased to 4.2% in June, down from 5.9% in May 2025. Year-on-year inflation of the non-food group, meanwhile, decreased to -2.8% in June from -3.4% in the previous month. On a year-on-year basis, the contribution of food commodities to inflation was 1.83% in June 2025. The contribution of non-food items stood at -1.55%. The Ceylon Electricity Board estimates that the requirement of coal in the Norachole-Lakwije power plant during the 2025-2026 season will be 2.32 million metric tons, plus or minus 10%. Bids will be called for the procurement of the coal requirement, which is equivalent to 39 shipments. The Cabinet of Ministers approved the relevant proposal presented by the Minister of Power and Energy. The Colombo Bourse closed in positive territory today as a result of price gains in counters such as DFCC Bank, NTB Bank and Axis Engineering. The SBI gained 0.25% to close at 19,091.93 points, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 gained 0.19% to close at 5,657.62 points. Market turnover crossed 5.9 billion rupees. The banking sector was the highest contributor to turnover, followed by capital goods. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net sellers, offloading shares worth 160 million rupees. Welcome back to First at 9. Now, in your international news, US President Donald Trump's administration released a trove of records on the assassination of Martin Luther King, including FBI surveillance files on the civil rights leader. A court-imposed order had kept the documents totaling 230,000 pages blocked from public view since 1977. Among the documents are leads the FBI received after the King's assassination and details of the CIA's fixation on King's pivot to international anti-war and anti-party movements in the years before he was killed. In January, President Trump ordered that documents from the assassination of King and former President John F. Kennedy be declassified, along with the records in the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. A statement from his two living children condemned any attempts to misuse these documents in ways intended to undermine their father's legacy. 25 Western nations, including Britain, France, Canada, Australia and New Zealand, have jointly called for an immediate end to Israel's war in Gaza, condemning the inhuman killing of over 800 Palestinians, many of whom died near food distribution sites. The statement criticized Israel's restricted aid delivery, calling it dangerous and degrading to human dignity. The countries, many of them close allies of Israel, and the US said the humanitarian crisis has reached new depths. Israel rejected the criticism as disconnected from reality, saying it wrongly shifts blame away from Hamas, which it holds responsible for prolonging the war. That's all for tonight from Fest at 9. Thank you. Have a great night.